Morning world, it's the 31st of July 2019. I will be doing a video later today on the global forecast for August, but something's caught my eye in the last 24 hours. I'm looking at the horoscope of Jeffrey Epstein. Born on the 20th of January 1953 in Brooklyn, New York. Now, there is no recorded birth time for him, or if there is, I've not been able to find it. Normally, I would spend a couple of minutes analysing his horoscope and looking to see if I could work out a time of birth for him. I don't feel it's that pertinent now. What I am looking at is the fact that he was born on the 20th of January 1953, and regardless of the time of day that he was born, his sun is at the very, very end of Capricorn or the very start of Aquarius. On that day, the sun changed sign at about just before 4 a.m. So it's a 6-to-1 chance that he's an early Aquarius as opposed to a late Capricorn. I could spend a long time going over his history and biography, and everything I'm about to say is in the public domain. In recent days, his case has become ever more notorious for a couple of different reasons. One is that he was found on his cell floor with wounds to his neck. There are 4 different accounts as to how this may be. 2 of them say that he tried to kill himself. One suggests that it wasn't as bad as it's made out to be. And one account suggests that his cellmate, who's a police officer awaiting charges of murder, may have facilitated this. This is all to be found on Wikipedia. Jeffrey Epstein, over the years, has been a confidante, close friend of a number of very, very powerful people. From Donald Trump and Bill Clinton through to Adnan Khashoggi, Kevin Spacey, Prince Andrew of England. Jeffrey Epstein has had regular contacts with people all over the world involving very high profile positions, especially in countries like Kazakhstan and Saudi Arabia. Jeffrey Epstein has had a passport with his picture but a different name in it found by American police. And there does seem to be some type of inference that at some stage in the distant past he did have some type of connection with various security services. It's interesting how he got his start. Even though he dropped out of school without any degrees, at the age of 20 he was taken on as a teacher in a school where the headmaster was Donald Barr, the father of the current American Attorney General. There's no explanation as to how he got that job available that I've been able to find. Nevertheless, this was the start of his meteoric rise to fame. I will come back to what's going on for him in a minute, but suffice to say at the moment that he is probably an Aquarius, certainly with the moon in Aries, and with Sun square Saturn in his chart. He's part of that Saturn-Neptune conjunction group, born in 1953. And he has Venus and Mars together, conjunct in the middle of Pisces. Come back to this in a bit. One of the charges that Jeffrey Epstein is currently up against is that of illicit sexual matters involving young women, and it is alleged that his close friend of 20 years, Ghislaine Maxwell, has been mentioned, and again my source is Wikipedia and a number of other websites, including the BBC and Fox News, as being someone who may have procured these young women for Jeffrey Epstein's illicit affairs. Ghislaine Maxwell, the daughter of Robert Maxwell, is someone who's lived in Manhattan lived in America since her father's death. Now, she was born on the 25th of December 1961. Now, she's a Capricorn with the moon in Leo. Strong Capricorn as well. But what's really interesting is that her Saturn is at 29 degrees of Capricorn, conjunct Jeffrey Epstein's sun. Many years ago, a number of women took out civil cases against Epstein and Maxwell, and when these cases got to court, they did not reach the end of their session because a financial settlement was agreed involving payouts of millions of dollars to these women. The documents were then sealed. They're about to be released at any time in the next few days, just as Mercury stops going retrograde. What I find fascinating from an astrological perspective is that at this time, Neptune in the sky is spending all of this year conjuncting Jeffrey Epstein's Venus and Mars, and that in the short-term future, by which I mean the end of August, start of September, Jupiter in the sky will square his Venus and Mars. So his situation in the short term is likely to escalate and become ever more neurotic, and I consider him to be at risk for a number of different reasons. The long term is fascinating. All of next year, Saturn in the sky is going to sit on top of Jeffrey Epstein's sun, well, for 9 or 10 months. And at the same time, it's going to sit on top of Ghislaine Maxwell's Saturn. It is interesting that one of the people they've had connections with in the past, Prince Andrew of the royal family of England, also has a conjunction of Venus and Mars at 29 degrees of Capricorn, and Saturn in the sky will pass on top of his Venus and Mars next year at the same time as it passes on Ghislaine Maxwell's Saturn and Jeffrey Epstein's sun. I suggest that as a result of this, a lot of chickens are going to come home to roost, and there will be developments in a way that's going to bring a much greater degree of, hopefully, openness and transparency into some of the situations that have been perpetrated by Epstein, allegedly, and possibly by others connected with him over recent years. Bearing in mind that Epstein's address book is now in the public domain, and it's clear to anyone who's seen it, and it's available online, that he has connections in many different countries with a lot of very high power people. I imagine that there's quite a few people who are a bit worried about what he might say. And from an astrological perspective, with Saturn coming up to his sun and Neptune on top of his Venus and Mars, if I were dealing with him as a client, I'd be saying to him, well, I consider to you to be, I think your health is at risk at this time. I think there's a danger of, if he were at liberty, I'd be saying to him, you need to be really careful about alcohol and about dealing with the world the way it is as opposed to the way you want it to be. Obviously, I'm trying to be as objective as I can, but it does seem to me that particularly in Epstein's case, that he's unlikely to be vindicated and cleared of all charges. Therefore, he is likely to, providing he stays alive, he is going to get a prison sentence. And if that's the case, it may be a long one, in which case a number of people will be sweating that he doesn't do a plea bargain, and in return incriminate others. And it also raises the case of his finances. It may be that he doesn't have a lot of money. It may be that he has lots. But he's removed all of his money into offshore accounts in the Virgin Islands, to a lesser extent Bermuda. And if he's in prison and he can't access his money, the question is, I wonder what will happen to it. It's an extremely convoluted and complex state. But it's pretty clear that over the years he has not behaved in a transparent and clear way in his dealings with young women, underage women. And bearing in mind that over recent years I have been particularly critical of various elements of different religions and their sexual perversions in terms of dealing with young children. So there's very little difference between that and the Epstein case, really. A combination of Neptune and Saturn seem to be saying that, okay, chickens are coming home to roost. And I expect a murky and somewhat confused outcome to this case. I'll try and be a bit more cheery next time, but I just felt I needed to do this video. Okay, now I'm going to do the global forecast for the world ahead. Catch you later, world. Bye.